here.
Boom.
Welcome back,
Golly.
Liz.
It's January. Welcome back. So we're here with Author Adventure, the art and business of publishing. We're sharing our 5 secrets of publishing and being successful and how to become a best-selling author. And this is episode 24. And in just a minute, we're going to be talking with author Timothy Lewis. And Tim is a longtime friend of mine. We grew up together, and so I'm very excited to have him on here in a minute. But before we do that, I think Russ is going to share with us maybe something related to technology. Technology is kind of the bonus.
Absolutely.
The 5 secrets. It's technology can be a secret of its own for some of us that aren't so tech literate, but share something with us, Russ, that most authors maybe don't think about or don't even know is available to help them.
Well, we mentioned many times on the show before, Liz, about the idea that, when you're thinking about launching a book or you're writing a book or you have a manuscript already in place, there's a lot of elements that you have to think about as far as the promotion of this work that you've completed. And what we really want to encourage authors to think about and consider is how you can grow your community. And right now, as you know, we're on social media, we're online, we're actually connected. And, like Zoom sessions last 2 or 3 years have been very prominent. And it's really important for us to remember how to use these elements to encourage and communicate and share the information that we're looking to produce results with. There's so many opportunities out there with technology to be able to build a community and connect with relationships. And, I share this on a regular basis on other shows and online. But if you're on Facebook and you build a community, make sure that you're engaging with your audience, make sure that you're connecting with your audience. And there's always kind of tools that you can use to help post and use social media as a way to engage with individuals. There's social posting. There's, you can use Canva to create images that you can actually share that, mention your work and your efforts and do it in a way that is engaging and be curious and ask people questions. When you're out there.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared of the technology. Don't be overwhelmed by the technology. Maybe just choose one thing to start with. You don't have to be on everything at first. Just pick one thing and get started and start building that community, because that's what happens. People wait until they get the manuscript or till they publish, and then they're trying to figure out who they're going to sell to, who they're going to market or promote to. And if you've been doing that a little bit early, in the game, even while you're writing, that'll be great. So thanks, Pete, for joining us.
Yeah, Pete. He's from across the water and a great musician and creates a lot of music. So thanks, Pete, for joining us today.
Fabulous. All right. So we have this episode 24, like I mentioned, and so get your tech in line. If you have questions about that, you always can call Russ. You can email. You can follow him on LinkedIn. You can follow our Author Adventure. Yep. And so go and do that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook, and then you'll get notified when we have a show like this. But let's get to it. So our author today is Timothy Lewis, and Timothy's a Christian fiction novelist, basically. And so, we talk children's book, nonfiction, and fiction every once in a while. But I think fiction's the most challenging. So, Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Liz and Russ. Great to be here.
It's always great to have authors come in and share information about their journey and what they're up against and some of the things that prompted their beginnings and why they started writing in the first place. So love to hear your story and look forward to sharing it.
I started my journey as an agriculture major in college, and my senior year, I decided I was majoring in the wrong thing and changed to music of all things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
All right.
I was really interested in performing, and I was in the spring musical. And one day I thought I wrote a little music, played the piano, and I thought I bet I could write something. And so I teamed with a lady, and we wrote some musicals together, and we did those all over Texas and around the Southwest. And then after that, I thought, I'd like to try my hand at writing a novel, but I didn't know what I was going to write. So we moved up into the Texas Panhandle to Canyon, Texas, and West Texas A&M University is there. And I was walking around the campus for exercise, and one day I noticed all the bicycles around, and I thought, wouldn't this be a great place for a middle grade mystery like a Hardy Boys mystery? And so I thought, what can I do with kids on a college campus and bicycles? And so I walked around and I looked, because as writers, we write about what we see, we write about what we know. And here I'd been to college and graduate school. I knew about colleges. I thought, how can I write about that and make it interesting for kids? I'd never heard of a kid's book set on a college campus. We call that in the author business high concept. And that is, you take ideas that are already out there and you make them something different, like 12-year-old boys on the college campus, and that's called high concept. So I thought, what if all these bicycles started getting stolen? Well, how could I write about that? So one day I was looking down a drainage grate. I don't know about you, but I've always been interested in drainage grates. I like to look down them and see what's down there. And I looked, and then one of the campus cops had told me about these underground tunnels that went underneath the university that nobody knew existed.
Knew about that. No,
and then I found out they're under lots of universities. So I was
they're all over. You don't even know it.
So I was looking down the drainage grate one day, and I saw leaves and gum wrappers and dirt. And I thought, what if two kids were on a college campus, bikes were being stolen, they didn't know how they were transporting them off campus, and they looked down in this grate, and what do they see at the bottom in the dirt? They see bicycle tracks. So that was the beginning of actually a middle grade novel that didn't get published until a year ago. So it takes a while. I had to wait 25 years for that particular book to be published.
That's great. That's great.
Was that book?
That's the Galore. Yeah, that's the next one.
That's actually the next one. I kind of skipped ahead.
You jumped ahead.
There it is, right there.
The glitter effect.
Yes, it was. It was almost accepted, and then my agent retired, and then I just kind of put it in a file cabinet. And it had skateboards in it, and skateboards, as y'all probably remember, went out of vogue, and rollerblades came in, so nobody wanted a novel with skateboards. And then suddenly skateboards were back in, and even maybe a competition in the Olympics. So I got the novel back out, dusted it off, sent it in, and it was accepted.
And your daughter did the graphic art for this cover, didn't she? She's an artist herself, Lana.
That's kind of a cool story. When I first wrote the book, my daughter was in elementary school. She loved it. She took it to school and had her teacher read it to the class. And I went up and actually talked about the manuscript. But then by the time it was published, she was grown and had a degree in art and specialized in graphic art. And so she did the cover as an audition for the publishing house, and the publishing house hired her. They liked it so much to do more covers.
That's fantastic. I love that story.
Generational. We got to get generational activity going here for sure. Well, that's a great story, and that's it. And so, you have to, when people ask me, what do I write about? That's what I always say. Write about something and something that you like, because you're going to live with it for a long time. Like you said, 25 years, I mean, it was 5 years when I did my first book, but I still sell that book. It's called Creative Monster, and I still got the last, I published in 92, so I had to print 2,500 copies back then. Amazon, the internet didn't exist. And I probably still have the last 25 or 30 copies of that book, because I sold the other 2,300 or 2,200 or 25 or whatever it was. But you got to live with books a long time. So, don't just pick something that you think is trending, because like you say, it can go out of fashion.
You are most passionate about what you know, and you can write about what you don't know, but it takes a lot of research. And I say, if you do write about something you don't know about, which I've done, spend the time it takes for research. Because let me tell you, readers can see through. And readers love to contact you on your website or tell you in a review on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. They love to say, you didn't get that part right.
Right.
Gosh, I
Quick to
hate it.
criticize. So that brings up a question then, Timothy, is how do you process the character development? How do you imagine that process in your writing?
I like to watch people, and a lot of times I will find people who I think look like the character I want to write. It is important to have that character fixed very well into your imagination. When I teach writing, I hand out a sheet and I have my students check off things and make up this character's background, especially a main character. If you have a main character, you need to write their whole character history. Make up who their grandparents were, where they grew up, their whole backstory. Because one of the things that gives characters depth is to know their backstory. You may not ever use that in your novel, but believe me, it comes through in your voice and in your writing if you really know who you're writing about.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that's certainly true. And like you say, today you can interview people about a subject if you don't know about it. I mean, there are other experts out there that you can learn for. You can compile some things. You can do any of those things like that you to learn about a subject. But it really does help if you know your subject, you like your subject, you love it, you're curious about it, you want to know everything about how it all works, and I think that's a good tip and a strategy. So those of you that are watching and listening, we're going to be dropping these nuggets to the authors that we're interviewing, like Tim. Always have great strategies, and these are the things that are going to help you be successful. So I hope you're taking notes about that.
Let me tell you two more quick things on characters.
Okay.
Make sure your characters are believable.
Yeah.
No character is perfect. Your main character is not perfect. Your main character needs to have flaws. And get this, your villain is not totally bad. Your villain has at least one, let's say, sort of good quality. Because no one really is totally evil. No one is totally good. So remember that in your characters.
We carry both sides of us everywhere. Which one do we want to be with every day? I think it's really important also, and Liz has talked about it many times, and I'm always curious about how to start. What's the beginning process of bringing these facts and ideas and characters together to be able to generate something that's interesting and kind of sparks an interest in other people reading it. What are your thoughts on that?
The most important line you're going to write is the first line in your book. Because when people go into a bookstore or look at a book online, they're going to open the cover and they're going to read that first line or the first paragraph. And if they don't like it, guess what they're going to do? They're going to close that book and put it away. So work hard on your first line. For the novel Forever Friday, which we haven't talked about, but we will in a minute, I worked for 2 weeks on the opening line. And now that opening line is the voiceover in the book trailer, and there's possibly going to be a movie, and it's actually the first line of the screenplay. So it worked very well for me and it set the whole tone for the novel. And I wanted it to set a certain tone, and I worked very hard on that. But your first few paragraphs in your book should identify your main character, your place, your time, and at least give a strong hint of your conflict.
Yeah, what's coming up. Well, and tell us a little bit, because very interesting backstory here, too, just for Forever Friday, wasn't it, Tim? Tell us how this book came about.
Forever Friday was really my break into what I call the big time, as big as it's gotten. But it allowed me to be published with a mainstream house. Penguin Random House published this book. And I discovered a collection of antique postcards at my great aunt and uncle's estate sale that no one knew existed. In fact, I dug them out of the trash. And what I found was my great uncle had written his wife, my great aunt, and they lived in the same house. He had written her a postcard with an original love poem on the back every Friday for 60 years, and no one knew. And I thought, man, if that's not a hook for a love story, I've never
Oh,
known.
don't know what is. Yeah, for sure. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. So you took those postcards, created a whole story around that.
Mm.
I did. I
Um,
based it on my great aunt and uncle.
yeah, and so basically it's there's a gentleman that comes in, right, finds the postcards. He's had a broken love affair, or he's in the middle of a bad
He's
breakup.
been through a bitter divorce, and he wonders, is there a secret to lasting marriage? So
Yeah.
he finds a similar set of postcards, and so he puts the pictures and the poems together, and he begins a journey. Is there a secret to lasting marriage? And that's how I
Mm.
actually pitched it to my agent, who pitched it to Random House, and they picked it up.
Yeah,
That's
great, great. So you
I
can
love that.
Yeah, it's a great story. And so you can connect with Timothy and follow him on Amazon. All of his books are there on Amazon. So you can go. It's Timothy Lewis, Timothy, Lewis, Lewis. And it's Forever Friday. And then The Glitter Effect. And then he's got a third book. Let's talk about that a little bit. And then we'll come back and if you will, Tim, share too a little bit more about, maybe how you get an agent or traditional publishing, because, obviously that's the goal for a lot of people. And, you can self-publish, but traditional publishing still exists. It's a little more difficult and it takes a little bit longer. But let's talk about that a few minutes too, if we have time. But let's talk
Okay.
about Running Downwind first, because I'm very interested to read this. I haven't gotten this book yet, but it's on my reading list, so I'll be checking this one out. But this is kind of close to home too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So running downwind is purely the definition of high concept. What I talked about a while ago, taking an idea, turning it upside down, and making it something different. I write a lot about Texas, and so I thought, what in Texas, what in my lifetime in Texas happened that is memorable? Well, the first thing I remember happening, I was in the fourth grade. John F. Kennedy was assassinated right there in Dallas, where y'all are.
Right.
And that
Mm.
hit, and we live not far from Dallas, so that really hit home with me. And then 3 years later, I was in the sixth grade, and some guy started shooting off the tower at UT, and it was the first mass school shooting. Those are both very tragic events. So I thought, okay, what if I took those events, took characters who came out of those events and were affected by them, a man in one event, a woman in another, and they come together and have a love story. Now, wouldn't that be high concept? So that's exactly what I did. And
Mm.
it's already on its way to being a bestseller. It's been out
Yeah.
about 2 months.
Right,
Well,
right.
congratulations on that. A lot of creative elements are drawn from unfortunate circumstances.
Yes.
And if you look at it and some of the things that are developed, because it develops resiliency, and it develops tenacity and the ability to say, I'm not going to give up on this. And that's one of the things that we've talked about many times on the show is don't give up on your book, don't give up on your writing, don't give up on your dream. Continue to pursue it, even if it takes longer. It's still worthwhile investment of your time, because once you create something like that, it's there forever. It's a legacy. And if you stop and that it beats the alternative to producing this thing. And it's really nice to be able to say, I did this, and I can put it out there and I can share it with the world. So it's really great to see success stories like this.
Well,
And just
absolutely.
that
And
creative process too. Just
Mhm.
just going through the process, Tim, don't you think that really stretches your mind and it stretches your
Oh, I
concept
do.
of what's possible?
It's very important to believe in yourself and believe in what you write. And I knew this running downwind. I had editors tell me it's too complicated. People won't understand it, and I just refused. To be blunt, I refused to dumb it down.
Right.
So I kept pushing. And it took several years and I was turned down many times for this novel, and it
Uh-huh.
took years. Finally, I've never really had an easy one. I think maybe
Right.
the next one I'm working on now. Well, I've already have a publisher interested.
Well, when you discover how an easy one works, let us know.
I don't think there is an easy one. And you know, and once they do pick it, you have to defend it. I always have to defend my titles when I write something. And so it seems like, you know, the wolf's always at the door. But let me tell you, when you finally run that wolf off, it's great. It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah,
And
it
talk
really
a little
is.
bit about that process.
Nothing like
because,
holding it in your hand, is there?
Yeah. Talk about traditional publishing. I know Liz started talking about that. And from your perspective, having gone through that process, what advice would you share with the community here and somebody that's just thinking about that, or they're trying to decide, do I publish traditionally or do I self-publish? What are some considerations you went through?
When I started, self-publishing wasn't an option, so it was only traditional publishing. So I would say, if you want to publish traditionally, don't give up because it's hard. It is hard. But I would say the first thing you need to do is do your best work. Put out your best work. And sometimes you need to get in a critique group to do that. Now, do you know what I mean by a critique group? Y'all do. For you listeners, if you don't know, that's a group of people you get with who are writers. And you meet usually weekly, and you read your stuff to them, they read their stuff to you, and you critique it. And that helps a lot in that process. And then you do, if you want to publish traditionally, you need to find an agent. And a lot of times finding an agent is harder than getting published.
Right.
It's most difficult.
Because all agents don't do the same thing, do they? Like, not all agents pitch nonfiction. Not all agents, do fiction. And sometimes they have special genres, and so you've got to find that agent first, like you say, right?
So get a good agent guide. They're online now. You can find them at Barnes & Noble. There's all kinds of guides out there. Writers Market has a good one. Just and look up agents who are representing what you like to write. I tell people, here's what I do. I say, go to Barnes & Noble, get your favorite beverage, walk around and find books like you want to publish, and then open the cover and go to the acknowledgments and read who that author thanks. And a lot of times they'll thank their agent. Voila, you know who their agent is.
You get their name, yeah.
So like for me, love stories. I'm a man who writes love stories. I wanted to find out who's Nicholas Sparks' agent. Because, he's sort of the master, or used to be the master male love story writer. And so I did actually interviewed with his agent at a conference one time. So, first, work hard on getting an agent.
Yeah, and then you can do that too, can't you? You can go to conferences, and a lot of times at writing conferences, there'll be some agents there. There'll be some traditional publishers there, and you'll get to actually meet them, and you got to kind of be prepared, like you say, kind of try to find out who they are ahead of time, or if you see their name in the program or in the schedule, go look them up, find out something about them, find out whose book they represent, so that you can have an intelligent conversation. You don't want to go up and pitch a cookbook to somebody that's a fiction, that only does science fiction or romance. It's just
there's all sorts of guidelines online how to make a pitch.
Right.
And then don't you have to write or have you written a formal book proposal as well?
Yes, I have. That's called a query letter. And the query letter will be the most important letter you'll write in your career.
Yeah.
And, it depends on that. There's 3 paragraphs usually in a query letter. There's the introduction, and then the body, and then the closing. But you can add other things. I added a paragraph about my passion for writing the book. But let your query letter, when you send your query to an agent or an editor and you get it back and they don't take it, learn why they didn't, try to find out why they didn't, and then rewrite your letter. Let that letter evolve as you go along, and you'll finally get it just right, and I'll guarantee you'll get someone to read it and to listen to you.
I just want to give a shout out to Jim. Thank you so much for being here, Jim. love to have authors join us every week, Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Central Time. And it's really fascinating to me, Tim, to understand some of the formality and some of the journey that people take. And I know that you teach as well. So it's really important for people to understand that you have this experience, that you've been here, you've done that. You probably bought the shirt and have owned the mug as well. So I just want to remind people that, you know, we're bringing a lot of great information here. And I just want to thank you for your time as well. So it's really important to acknowledge.
So Tim, if somebody, like you say, I know you teach writing classes, so that's another option too. People can go at not only at the university level, but obviously now there's a lot of publishing information online. There's really not anything you can't learn today yourself, but you got to make a decision. You got to decide, do you want to traditionally publish? Do you want to have, you know, complete control of everything? Or are there some things you're willing to give up, or you got to know what you're going to fight for? Like you say, sometimes they want to change your title. Sometimes they want to change the name of your character. And you can't just go with the flow and say, okay, whatever y'all want to do, just because you're so grateful somebody gave you a contract or an agreement.
You learn to give and take. Yeah. You learn how to work with certain editors, and some editors are really tough and they don't want to bend very much. But you know, you as author have the ultimate say. You can always override them. But I try to give and take. I try to let them have some wins and me have some wins, and we all come out really good in the middle. But you reminded me of a story I want to tell you about when I taught writing and when I teach writing. Usually it's a night class and we meet for 3 hours. And so I would walk in, I'd let the students get there. I'd walk in, I'd write my name on the board, and I'd say, now we're going to, instead of taking 2 breaks, we're going to just take 1 break in the middle. And what I did tonight was I hired a pilot in a small plane to come down to the university here and fly me here. And we landed on the practice field. So when we landed, I said, give me the keys. And I gave him $20. And I said, go get supper. I'll keep the keys for you. So I tell my students, so during the break, anybody who wants to go up and fly, I've got the keys. We'll go up and we'll fly around, around the town a little bit. And then I say, I've never flown a plane before, but I've ridden in a lot of them. So, how many want to go? So by that time they're kind of getting it. And so my point is, just because you've read books, it doesn't mean you can write them. And what you have to do, whether you self-publish, whether you traditional publish, you have to learn the rules. And there are lots of rules that you need to learn in order to write a book properly.
Yeah, and that's what we tell people all the time. And there are a lot of moving parts to publishing, and it can be overwhelming. So you just got to take it a step at a time. Focus on the writing. Like you say, get started, figure out what you want to write about, and then share it, even whether it's an experience or it's characters or it's a place or a location that you love. Get started, because once you start, then the ideas just kind of flow. I mean, things will come to your mind that you would have thought about until you started writing. You do need to think about those marketing and promotional opportunities. And you really got to think seriously about your audience too, don't you, Tim? Let's talk about that for just a minute. We don't have long, but I think, we tell people all the time, your book's not for everybody. And even if it was, you can't market to everybody. None of us have enough money to market to everybody. So that's why you got to choose that audience. But I think it really helps, because I have my avatar. I have that audience person in my mind. When I start to write, I know how old they are. I know what their hobbies are. I know if they're educated or uneducated, if they have children or they don't have children. I create all that backstory for the reader, and then I write to that person. So it's a more intimate, piece. Do you think that helps, or what would you say about audience to somebody that's?
I think it's very, very important to know your audience. If you're writing for kids, if you're writing, let's say, middle grade, grades 2 through 6, then that book has to be a certain page length in a range. You can't write, 85,000 words for a middle grader. I guess if you're Harry Potter, you can.
Right.
You write Harry Potter. But normally a middle grade novel is 15 to 20,000 words at the most.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you get the word count right. And then middle grade novels are written in single viewpoint. And what I mean is you're only looking through one set of eyeballs, your main character. They're rarely multiple viewpoint. But then you get up into young adult, which can be a longer word count. You can have multiple viewpoint in those, and there's just not a lot of difference anymore in young adult and adult. But the subject matter is different. But so learning point of view is very important according to what audience you're writing for, and word count.
What audience do you see taking interest in becoming authors? Is there a demographic that you see coming up and taking a little bit more active role in becoming writers?
I see lots of college students who want to be writers. They have a little bit of a rosy view of it because they think, oh, I'm going to get to sit in my computer in my pajamas and write this novel, and it's going to instantly be a hit. And 1 in a million times that happens, but it doesn't very often. I see a lot of retired people who retire and they think, man, I want to write a novel before I die. And so they're not quite as rosy in their thoughts, but sometimes they are. And they think, I'm going to sit down and write this novel. And it's going to be a bestseller. It's just a lot of work, whatever age you are, whenever you do it. But I see, probably to answer your question, younger people and retired people. The people who are middle-aged and have to support their families don't have time really to think about writing a novel.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense for sure. Well, this has been a great conversation, and we've learned, and I've learned so much too, because like you say, I don't write fiction, so I haven't done as much study and I haven't done as much learning about that. And so I appreciate what you shared about character and about point of view. And like we say, if you want to get into writing, you want to be an author, you want to pursue this as a career, you can, but you got to learn it's a business. It's an industry, just like any other industry. And there are certain processes, there are certain rules, as Tim mentioned, that you have to learn about. So go and learn that. And you can come here and learn that. So that is one of the reasons that we do this show every week on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. because we want to share these strategies. We want to bring different authors in so they can share what they're doing. And then you can learn from that. So learn from what others are doing. Connect with Timothy online. It's Timothy Lewis. You can follow him on Amazon. You can get it. All of his books are going to be there on Amazon. And so go check him out. And I guess, Tim, if there's one last thing that you want to leave the audience with, what would that be?
One last thing is this is my favorite book. Can you see this? Your first novel by Laura Whitcomb and Anne Rittenberg.
Yeah.
One of these ladies is an agent, the other is an author. And so half the book's about how to write your first novel, and the second half is about how to land an agent and sell your first novel. This is the main text I use when I teach writing. There's a bunch of different editions, but this is the book I recommend. Your First Novel by Laura Whitcomb and Anne Rittenberg.
Great.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Tim, thanks so much. And you do have, I think you got an option, or you're in maybe that process of a script, possibly for a movie. And maybe you come back later on and talk to us a little bit about that and what that process is like.
I'll tell you what, when we get what's called the green light, I'll come back.
Yeah, because it's a little bit different process, isn't it? Because taking a book and then writing a script, it's not verbatim. You don't take the novel verbatim and put everything in the movie. You can't do that. So the
movie is maybe a third of the novel in length.
Yeah.
Wow.
A page of a screenplay equals a minute on screen. So most screenplays are between 80 and 120 pages.
Right.
And a screenplay page is half the length of a book page. So just think about that. You have a 400-page novel. Just think how much has to be left out.
That's a lot of editing.
Yeah. But
right.
in movies, you have vision, you have sound. There's a lot of different ways to tell the story besides just the words. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It is fascinating. It's a fascinating process too, and that's a process in and of itself. So if you'd rather do screenwriting and you lean more to on films and movie rather than reading, that's an option for you too. There's a lot of ways you can write creatively and create content today, like us. You can do a live stream, you can do a podcast. You don't even have to write a book. You can record. We're old fashioned. I still write longhand. I don't know about you, Tim. And then I transfer it to the computer, and then I transfer it to the layout, and then we publish and go through all those steps. But whatever you want to do, figure it out, find a mentor, find a critique group, and start and just stay with it. Don't give
Yep.
up. A lot of our authors have mentioned that. Just don't give up. May
Yeah.
take you 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 20 years. But if you really want to do it and you really have something to say and you want to share that with people, then we encourage you, and come here and get encouragement. And you can always call Russ or me. You can follow Tim. You can get in touch with him. If you're out in West Texas, be looking for him. I'm sure he's at the local bookstores and other places. And so we're out of time, of course. We've gone over a little bit, but this has been such an interesting conversation, Tim. And I thank you so much for your time today and for joining us. This has been great fun to catch up.
Thank you. Write that novel that's close to your heart and don't give up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And until next week, keep
Well,
writing.
Okay.
Keep writing. That's right.
Take care.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.